I'm Emily Rooney. Welcome to Beat the Press. Our topics: why you won't be watching the Whitey Bulger trial on TV. The government secretly obtains Associated Press reporters' phone records. Bloomberg News gets caught spying on Bloomberg's business clients. And our panel rants and raves of the week. Joining me are Dan Kennedy of Northeastern University, WGBH's Kelly Crossley, Adam Riley, also of WGBH, and author and journalist Roy Harris. We go first into the world of wishful thinking. The media is salivating at the prospect of a televised Whitey Bulger trial. We'll lobby the courts. We'll get a waiver from the federal government. We'll take it to the Supreme Court. But the reality is, it's not going to happen. It's been more than 30 years since the Supreme Court paved the way for states to allow cameras in the courtroom. And since then, all 50 states have done it.
Not guilty of the crime of murder.
In fact, cameras in the courtroom have provided some of the most compelling real-life drama in television history.
Guilty.
Not guilty.
But those high-profile criminal cases have all taken place in state courts, not federal. Retired federal judge Nancy Gertner says the ban on cameras in federal criminal courts is really not justified.
The state courts are the courts that have the much more serious criminal cases, serious in the sense of violence, sex, the kinds of cases where there could be, you know, really the kind of interest that the public would want to have. And all of the concerns about cameras are really in those kinds of cases. Are people going to play to the cameras? Will victims be threatened, et cetera? Federal court cases tend not to be like that at all.
Federal courts have experimented with cameras, but only in civil cases. And Gertner says the feds are not about to make an exception in the Whitey Bulger case, even though new technology has made broadcasting trials easier than ever.
And at this point, there's a substantial question about, given the media, given technology, can we meaningfully make a distinction between the public in the courtroom and the public through the screen? I think that that train has left the station. I don't think that that's a meaningful distinction anymore, and it's about time the courts recognize that.
Meaningful distinction or not, when Whitey Bulger goes to trial in June, there will be no live cameras in the court, no streaming video or audio, just the old-fashioned sketch artist. Well, as Nancy Gertner alluded to, originally the fear over cameras in the courtroom was that it would be disruptive, that everybody, the lawyers, the defense, the witnesses would be playing to the cameras. And those were in the days when there was a clunky camera with a camera operator in the room and a still photographer. So there was the real presence of a camera. It was like that during the OJ trial, but that's all gone. I mean, there are stationary cameras and lockdown cameras and little tiny things. You don't even know they're there. So this idea that somehow it's going to be disruptive in a federal case and in a sense and not in the state, and as Nancy also rightly points out, all these salacious, incredible murder trials play out on the state level, and if there were going to be any grandstanding, like there was some, obviously, in the OJ trial, and we haven't seen quite the likes of that since, you know, it's not going to happen.
I have a smidgen of sympathy for the concern about people grandstanding for the cameras, because we live in this reality TV age where too many people are too excited about the prospect of enjoying their 15 minutes of fame. But that being said, if you want to, you know, show off in court, people are going to take notice as they live tweet in court. People are going to write about your antics, whatever they may be, and you'll hear about yourself on the news that evening. The bottom line is that, you know, these are very powerful institutions, federal courts, that shape the lives of people, and they should be as transparent as possible. We should be able to see how things work in them. I have no patience for the argument that, well, you know, people might watch these court proceedings and not understand what's really going on. If you want people to understand, open it up and let them see.
Well, this may be the result of the powerful courtroom artist lobby. I don't know. The reason that I believe all of these cases should be open to cameras, and the reason they should be open to cameras is very simple. These trials are open to the public, and letting TV cameras in is how we let the public in the 21st century. The idea that trials have to be open to the public goes back many, many centuries, and this is simply adding technology to what has traditionally been an absolute right that we have. So I have no patience for this argument at all. It's long overdue.
Well, I agree with you from a broadcaster's side. Obviously, we need to be in and recording what's happening and the impact of what people say as opposed to hearing what they say over a sketch. I mean, there's no comparison. On the other hand, I feel some sympathy about this for some of the judges, actually. Maybe it's because I personally know a federal judge. And in fact, he has a lot of salacious cases and a heavy, heavy duty security. And when we're just looking at Texas, where those guys that got out of the courtroom tracked down those judges and killed them. I mean, so that's a whole separate issue, I understand. But, there's all of that to be considered. So I'm sort of feeling the security issue, but I understand the transparency issue, and it makes a difference to be able to see and hear what people say in the moment. I mean, there's no substitute.
Well, I'm not a pure Luddite, but I think I'm the one here who really has questions about how trials play out on TV. I still can't get the O.J. trial out of my head. I was in Los Angeles at the time. I was actually in the jury pool, not for him, but about that time. I was in the building when they were picking the jury. And that trial, the ones that we just showed on the screen a couple of minutes ago, it really does strike me that it's still all about playing to the cameras and the big cases. And it really disturbs me. I picture myself being a jury there and not liking that at all. Being
like
a juror.
Jody Arias trial?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
it wouldn't have gone on as long.
Doesn't really fit.
If there hadn't been cameras in the courtroom, if Nancy Grace hadn't been having, it wouldn't have gone on that long. It was a two-bit murder case.
Yeah. But just because it happens in some cases doesn't mean it's going to happen in all of them. I was at the Tim Cahill trial pretty regularly. Didn't see any evidence that any participant in that was playing to the cameras. I caught a little bit of the Mattapan murder or murders trial. Saw no evidence again that people testifying or people on trial were playing for the cameras. So it just could have happened sometimes, and there's a worst case scenario.
We should also have cameras in the Supreme Court.
Yes,
I felt I've said this for 30 years. You've been hearing me say they should be inside executions. Anything that is our federal government at work, we should be allowed to see.
Absolutely. And to speak to your point, Roy, I wouldn't have a problem with a ban on showing the jurors.
I think that is banned, isn't it?
Yeah. And in some cases, the judges are too. And remember that we're all coming at this from the journalist perspective, but lawyers have made a case not so much about the playing to the camera, but whether or not that impedes the ability for somebody to get a fair trial. Because if there's any changing of the environment, however slight, which is why people sometimes ask for different venues and all the rest, then that could have an impact. Perhaps so. I don't know, and I don't know how to answer that, and I don't know what the balance is. So there we are.
All right, well, we're going to miss it.